Hey everybody, how y'all doing? This is Folo Patterson. Coming to you again with Folo's Convos. It's to remind you of who I am. I am the author of the soon-to-be best-selling book, Looking Through the Fall. And we are venturing into our first convo via Zoom. I have with me as my special guest tonight, Troy R., very dear friend of mine, but also a reader of the book. So now we are trying this new platform, seeing how this works, because we really want to be able to have the opportunity to have conversations with people beyond just those who can sit in front of me. There are many people who have read it abroad and who are not able to have the face-to-face. So let's try to do this whole modern technology thing. So let's see how this turns out. I'm excited about this. Troy and I have been trying to pull this together for 2 or 3 weeks now. And through one, exchange or another, something always happens. But finally, we are able to, engage this conversation. So, brother, so glad to have you. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
I'm glad to be here, my brother. I'm glad to be here. Finally, finally.
Finally, yeah, I had to have you for my first one. That was most certain. But before we even um, get into the book itself, I think that people really need to know the dynamic of you and I. So why don't you take a couple minutes just to introduce yourself and tell the viewing audience about who you are.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Troy R. As he has already introduced me. Um, I'm just a friend of of Folo Patterson for quite a while. Basically, we met when we was in incarceration in Arizona, and it was quite a introduction because first when I went into that place, it's like it's it's a strange area for me. It's a strange place for me because I didn't really know the area, didn't even really know Arizona itself, So I was transferred, from Cleveland to Arizona at the time. But when I got to Arizona, basically having no one, knowing nobody there, I entered into that pod, and my first greeting was one of my brother. I forgot his name. I don't even want to get into that part of it, but yeah, I forgot his name. But he came and he brought me to the so-called uh, 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 leader for kinfolks in
Leader for kids.
of the pod So me being in that situation, kind of surprising to me. But long story short, we were introduced, and we conversate for a little bit, and then after we say okay, then let's go ahead and get settled down, and we'll talk later on. And from there, you know spirit recognize spirit,
Hmm.
and
Right.
immediately we just connect like that. And I couldn't wait to go back and conversate with the brother, because he was just basically you can tell he was in a state of a troubling s- situation, and but also a humble spirit also too,
Hmm.
if I may say. But you know during that process, we kick it, and we talk about a lot of things, and then it led to a certain conversation, and I'm gonna let him kind of speak on that for a minute. And when where he came in, and he wanted to introduce himself, and wanted furtherance in the knowledge of the word of God. So I'm gonna let him go ahead and introduce himself with that.
Well, I would say this. It goes to show you that there are a vast variety of people who become incarcerated for a multitude of reasons. And everybody who goes through them doors aren't necessarily guilty. There are a lot
Right.
of people who are caught up in situations and circumstances that are beyond their means at the moment. you being one of those people. Um, when we first met, I was in that transitional stage as far as really trying to come into my own spiritually. When you came, I had been incarcerated for 5 months at that time, 4 months at that time, and I had just recently gave my life to Christ the month prior, 2 months prior to you coming. I did it in September. You came in November.
Yeah.
So during that month and a half that I was becoming this new person before you arrived, there was a lot of questions that I had about doing it properly. I was trying to figure out, how do I really get into to the word? How do I really read the Bible? If I'm going to do this thing, I want to do it right. And lo and behold, you come through the door as a transfer from out of state. And when they brought me to you, saying that I was what they call, the head or whatever,
Mhm.
um, right then I recognized something special about your whole
Right.
demeanor. And it wasn't even what you said in particular. It was the way that you carried yourself, the manner in which you even presented yourself. And I think it took us only a minute or two before God came into the conversation. And
Exactly.
once I realized that you were a believer, I'm like, well, bro, we can really start getting into this word. And then it didn't take long to recognize that you were astute in the word. So that was exactly what I needed at the time, because I needed somebody who was going to be able to push me in my growth and discovery of who I was trying to become. So, it's amazing how God will allow things to come into place for much bigger purpose. You know, I'm sure your world was turned upside down. Well, I know for a fact your world was turned upside down. Being in the situation that you was in, caught up in this whole big old net of, what they had done, this multi-state, bus or whatever, and you get dragged along with it, thinking that you were being victimized and done wrong. And on the surface, you were.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that there was a much, much bigger purpose being served far beyond you understanding why you were in that situation. Because, brother, I needed
Right.
you. There is no doubt.
Right.
I was in such a vulnerable place at that moment. And just the fact of me being able to have staying power, me being able to have the strength to continue to hang in there before I really got my footing good was imperative to me having that proper support. And in jail, the proper support is very few and far between.
Right.
And in my particular pod, there was nobody who was trying to be anything but the space they were in. So me trying to now transition out of that space in the midst of that was more than a challenge. God knew I needed a helping hand, because had I been left to my own devices, as much as I wanted to really be sincerely committed to change, it would have really been difficult for me to sustain that just based upon the environment itself. I
Mhm.
believe that it would have become overwhelming and I might have faltered and lost that fight. But lo and behold, he had a ram in the bush at the sacrifice of your freedom for a while. But
Right.
what took place was a relationship was born between the two of us. We began to get into the word every single day, and you push me, and we
Right.
have conversations, and then it gets to the point where I began to push back, and there was such a camaraderie that was built, and such a love that was being birthed for each other through the struggle, through the confinement, but also through the growth in the word.
Right.
And so as I think back on what has brought about me being aligned and positioned to write this book, right? It comes from spaces like that, recognizing the lens I was looking through at that time, the conversations of what you told me about the lens you were looking through, and also us observing the various displays of it around us.
Right.
There was layers that were peeled back, you
Exactly.
know, time and time again. And, I really do recognize the fact that God at times uses what we consider a discomfort, inconvenience, a struggle for the betterment of the next person. Because now what you presented and represented from my life was that sturdiness of righteousness, that representation. And I have to say, brother, that you really presented that and displayed that well, to a point where it encouraged me to want to strive to be better. It encouraged me to want to dig deeper into my word. It encouraged me to want to step up to the plate because I admired your commitment and stance that you walked in. And that's what I was aspiring for. So in the midst of us going through it, I say, thank God for you being there. Lord, fix his situation, bless his case. But Lord, I think that he's here.
Yeah, exactly,
Thank you that he's
exactly,
here.
exactly, exactly, exactly.
you know,
And I definitely I can understand the whole situation with what we were basically going through at the time, because at that time, is like, Lord, why me?
Mhm,
What have I done? But through the process, it becomes thank you
mhm,
for bringing me here, because
mhm,
I'm seeing it. Even leaving Cleveland at that time, I was doing the same thing there. I was
mhm,
just there doing what I do, just basically. First, when I got to Cleveland, the first thing I did is
mhm,
surrender my will to God, stating that, okay, then now I'm in this situation where they put my bond to I'm at, umpteen amount of money, and I was like, there's no way I have that type of money to pay anything, because I'm not in a position to pay no bond at that moment. So the first thing I did is surrender, and I asked this correction officer, can I get a Bible from you?
mhm,
And he said, there are some preacher come through there, they will give you a Bible, and I'll make sure that somebody get you a Bible at the moment. I just surrender. I just know that this is it. This is it. It's in your hand now, God. You need to take care of me right now. You see.
mhm,
And even through that process, me being in Cleveland for several months, right there, I was doing the same thing, and people came to me in the same process, asking me to, come and lead a Bible study for them, or teach them the word or whatever. And I'm like, this is a brother here who he has an accent, he have a list,
mhm,
and he started several times in his conversation whenever he's speaking. So I mean, that put me in a position where I'm kind of like reserved,
mhm,
speaking out loud to
mhm,
people.
mhm,
But in that time, at that moment, I tell you, bro, it is the process when it made me reflect back onto to Moses and Aaron, when God was telling Moses to go, tell Pharaoh to release the people from Egypt.
mhm.
And he's saying, what am I can't even speak.
Right,
And
right.
God said, that is not, there's no excuse for that, you know.
Mhm,
And if you're going to use that as an excuse, I'll give you Aaron,
right.
so Aaron can speak for you.
Mhm,
But when
mhm,
I study the Bible, really, Moses wasn't the one who was sitting back and Aaron was speaking. Moses is the one who spoke to Pharaoh.
mhm.
So why did you tell God that you can't speak
Right,
at that
right,
moment? You see what I'm saying? You
right,
tell God you can't speak, but you still are the one going to Pharaoh and say, let my people go.
right.
So at that time, I recognized it, and I said, okay, then whatever the people can catch from what I'm saying, that's what they're gonna get.
Mhm,
That's the seed that they're gonna grab onto, and that's what they hear, and that will be enough. I did
mhm,
my job, my reasonable service. So from there, I was just, sailing with just basically leading. Every time I've been asked, I just did what I need to do. Same thing when I came to Durango. The same thing happened. The
mhm,
brother asked me to lead it. He didn't know that I was even doing that at Cleveland.
Right.
But he asked me again. He came up to me and said, "Oh yeah, yeah, brother, we need somebody to lead because the one who was leading is not there anymore."
Mm-hmm.
So when I got that, I still surrendered myself and said, "Okay, then whatever it is, I'll do it, even though I'm putting self aside and knowing that this is the work of God." So by me saying all this, when I recognize this that I'm doing, my time spent in that process was well done.
Right.
God saying to me, well done, because basically, and I'm saying, thank you for using me in this process for lately. Because I remember, bro, it was 22 people came into the circle and gave their life.
Yeah,
Do you remember that day, bro?
I remember.
The circle was so big in the pod.
That's
They
around the
sent
pod.
for,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm telling you, they sent for other guards outside to come in and to see if there's somebody plotting something in the
Right.
pod or
Right.
whatever, what's going
Right.
on. But when they recognize and see it's 22 people in that pod gave their life to Christ.
Right.
And that was amazing to us. We were so
Minds were blown.
I mean, we were mind-boggling to the situation. Even one of them came up to us and said, "Can you baptize us?" I said, "No. When you get outside to your
Right. Right.
church, and you said, no, we can do it in the shower. You remember that, bro?
Yeah,
He
I
said we can
remember.
take."
Like, no, we ain't going that far, bro. I don't have the authority to do that quite. I
Yeah,
definitely remember that, man.
yes,
But
sir. So,
it goes to show you though how when you was using the example of Moses, we will quickly magnify what we consider our faults as a reason why we can't be obedient to what God is doing because we are uncomfortable with what He is requiring of us. And we are so quick to say, but I'm this or I don't have that, and try to find reasoning of justifying not doing it. But it's when we do that surrenderance and we say, okay, despite what I consider my shortcomings, I'm going to go ahead and step out on faith and believe that God has called me into this position or called me to do this or called me for this task, that we are able to be empowered to fulfill what it is. And here's the kicker part. That situation that you talked about with those 22 people in the prayer circle, which was something I've never seen since then. Right. That was a one time, but it was of such a magnitude. It showed the favor that God had upon us in that environment. When I first got there, those first 3 months, it was complete chaos. People were going to the bathroom to fight every couple of hours over gambling debts, over spades and whatever else. And as I began to come into the space of trying to grow into this new man, I intentionally took on the position of head of the kinfolk per se, not for the sake of having, wanting power in the pod, but because I knew that there was nobody else who was going to try to have sensible means of resolution for the pod. So Lord, if I step into this role, then prayerfully I can incorporate you into this,
right,
situation, and you can
right,
you can lead me. So when they brought you to me to introduce you, it was like, okay, now I got somebody else who can be in this space with me. And you witness yourself how God moved in many situations. He gave me such a boldness to step in the middle of, I don't know how many altercations we stopped. I can't
right,
even count them, right?
exactly.
I mean, it was like God gave us such a voice that when we spoke, it went far beyond just our race. The pod listened.
Yep,
I
exactly,
mean, shut it down.
exactly.
And it was such a boldness that we were equipped with. And I had no fear. Well, and it wasn't because I was big and bad, but I knew at that time that I was walking in the authority that God had given me. So if I'm saying this, I'm saying it from my belly and meaning for real,
Right, right,
you
right,
know. But because of that, though, God brought such a respect, so that even when we did the prayer circles and started doing the Bible studies, there was such a presence of the Spirit of God in that place that even those who were trying to denounce it couldn't ignore it.
right.
You know, and even the fact that you pushed me into doing the Bible study, I've told the story so many times. I never forget December 12th, 2011. Well,
Hmm.
prior to that, you had been telling me, well, you need to start doing Bible studies. I'm like, no, that's not my
Right,
lane. That's your lane. Because
right,
we had moved from just doing prayer circles to you reading the faith by faith, and you
right,
would pray, and then you would expound upon whatever the faith
right.
by faith, spoke of that day.
Restudying. Yeah,
And
right.
he was like, well, you need to go ahead and start doing it. I'm like, no, that's your lane. I'm still trying
Hmm.
to grow. Once again, give
Hmm.
me excuses, right? I'm
Exactly.
still growing, bro. I need to be poured into. So you got this. And you're like, okay, whatever.
Hmm.
You left me alone for a minute. I'll never forget one day I was laying on my rack, and you came in, you brought the faith to faith, you sat on my bed, you said, you doing this one today.
There
I'm
you
like,
go.
yeah, whatever. You walked off. So I caught
Yeah.
myself going back to reading my book, and I picked up the faith to faith, and the title of it was Tune In,
Hmm.
December 12th. And when
Hmm.
I read it, immediately it spoke to me. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, you know what? I actually can recognize what this is talking about. So maybe I can, say a little
Go
something
ahead.
about it because
Right,
I
right,
relate
right,
to it.
right,
So when
right.
we went to prayer circle that night, you say, well, Folo's going to be the one who's going to be sharing with us tonight. So, we thank God for him, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, you know what? I don't know how it's going to turn out, Troy making me do it, but
Hmm.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
But once I
Yeah.
read that first one, it was like the switch turned on.
Right.
Because when I begin to read it, I can't even tell you what I said, but I know it just flowed, and I was like, "Oh, okay,
Hmm.
I see what this feels." And from that point forward, we started doing it together, and then it
Exactly.
and then it went into full blown Bible studies.
Right, right.
But it goes to show how when we surrender ourselves to God's will, how He will begin to peel back these layers, these self-imposed obstacles,
Yeah.
the bondage that we keep ourselves tied into, the shackles that we have wrapped around our own ankle because of self-imposed limitations, they will begin to fall off.
Yeah.
And he will begin to do things in our life and give us a boldness and a clarity to move forward because it is him who's doing through us and not us depending upon ourselves. And
Exactly.
and that was such an experience for me to grow through with you. God allowed us to be together for a year
Yes.
in the same space before they moved me. But that year was probably one of the most impactful years of my life because it established me in such a way and
Yeah.
prepared me for the journey that was to come.
Yes.
It put in place the mindset of who I needed to continue to strive to be, but also the acceptance of God, of what God was making me into
Yes.
you
Yes.
know.
Yes. Yes.
And so I think about that constantly. You
Yeah.
know, I,
Yeah.
I I I would tell people many times I would have never chosen the road, but I thank God for the journey because it
Exactly.
cultivated something in me that wouldn't have come about any other way. And that started, with you,
Right.
2011.
Right. Exactly.
you know,
Yeah. Never, never forget. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's
it's
basically what I
go
go
ahead.
ahead, man. Yes, sir. And that's basically what I kind of recognize in the whole process, because my first, like I said, being in Arizona, with no one to really, I know what can, call or talk to in any way, because from there in Cleveland, I shut the world out. I
Mhm,
close everything. I don't make phone calls. I just make sure. That's how serious I was with the situation. That basically I'm just surrendering to God and say, God, you have this. You
mhm,
the one who's gonna you brought me here. You gonna lead me out of here. And
mhm,
I said, I'm not leaving Durango and go nowhere else. That
mhm,
was my whole mindset throughout the process. I said, I'm
mhm,
not leaving Durango, going anywhere else. I'm not going to no prison yard. I'm not taking none of that. So my mindset already closed, and I said, okay, then whatever you want me to do, the job is gonna be right here. It's finished right here, and I'm moving forward from here and moving on to do your work outside. So
mhm,
that's where my mindset. And when I got there, and I said, okay, then I didn't have no one. He gave me you.
mhm,
I didn't have money he gave me you as my raven.
Mm,
who fed me through the process.
mm,
Because I never forget these words. You said, I eat, you eat.
mm.
Never forget that, because I know basically right there and then, I know that this is nothing but God who's basically taking care of his child.
Amen.
And in the process, the child doing is reasonable service, because you're not doing nothing for God. You're doing your reasonable service. Anytime you do anything for God, it's for your own benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So you surrender to him. That's all he needed to do.
Look at that. Man, see, look at you. Look, we got caught up with you. Look, we can talk for another hour, just keep going and going. This is what we're gonna do right here, because before we even haven't gotten to the book yet.
Yes, sir.
Before we go any further, though, I want to go ahead and end it right here for part one, because we still have so much more to talk about, so much more to
Right,
cover.
right,
And if I let you keep
right.
on talking, it'd be a whole other hour before you finish. I gotta cut you off right there. But at this point right here, we're
Yes,
going
sir.
to end part one. Before I do, I want to invite everyone to go to my website at www.folopatterson.com. On there is all my social media hits. You can hit me on YouTube. I have my own page, Folo Patterson. I have the Looking Through the Fall 2020 at Gmail. We also have the Folo Patterson IG account. So we want to be able to be available to you in every way possible, but also to, this is all for the purpose of promoting this book, Looking Through the Fall, by myself, Folo Patterson. We are encouraging you to check it out. We also have it available in ebook. It is available at the website, as well as westbropress.com, and all major retailers as far as Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and so forth. Nonetheless, we thank you for joining us for this first part of the segment. Please make sure you catch the next part, because we're going to peel back some layers with this book. We're about to get real deep into the conversation about his experience, but also my experience in developing these characters and this plot. So please join us and stay tuned. Take care.
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay, wait, let's see. All right, you will receive an email notification when the recording is ready.